Your relationship with money started long before your first paycheck. Let's talk about why. Sometimes the money is already gone, yet admitting the purchase failed can feel like losing it again. An unused machine, abandoned hobby, or disappointing service may sit quietly while the explanation around it keeps changing. The pattern becomes clearer here. The financial event happened in the past, but acknowledgement happens in the present. That present recognition can carry its own emotional cost and threaten how you judge yourself. The central question is why saying "I wasted money" can feel more devastating than continuing to avoid, defend, or reinterpret the original decision. A person may promise future use, emphasize one minor benefit, or keep the item hidden. Each response can postpone a clear assessment without changing the original outcome. This episode will separate the completed financial loss from the current act of recognition, then show how acknowledgement can become useful without becoming self-punishment. Many purchases begin with a plausible expectation. The item may appear useful, motivating, efficient, enjoyable, or connected to a plan that made sense at the time. When reality differs, the object remains while the expected value fails to appear. That mismatch creates both a practical problem and a challenge to the earlier judgment. Observable avoidance can be ordinary, leaving the item in storage, walking past it, postponing resale, or changing the subject whenever the purchase is mentioned. Now, rationalization can sound reasonable because it preserves possibility. Maybe it will be useful later, maybe circumstances will change, or maybe the benefit is difficult to see. The explanation may protect self-image more than the purchase. If the decision remains potentially correct, the person does not yet have to update their view of their judgment. This is not a character flaw. Acknowledgement can combine financial regret, disappointment, and self-evaluation in one moment, making avoidance feel temporarily less painful. The key distinction is this: the original loss and the acknowledgement of that loss are separate events, even though they refer to the same purchase. The original loss concerns money already exchanged for value that did not arrive. The acknowledgement concerns what the person must now accept about expectation and judgment. Loss aversion can make the second event feel like another loss because recognition removes the remaining story that the decision may still become worthwhile. As long as the item remains defended, hope stays available. Admitting failure closes that interpretation and can make the loss feel more definite, visible, and personal. Recognition can also challenge identity. A careful spender may have to accept one careless choice, while a capable planner may confront a plan that did not work. The emotional cost therefore includes more than money. It can include reduced confidence, embarrassment, and the loss of a preferred explanation of the past. Sunk cost attachment may extend the process. Continued storage, maintenance, or additional spending can preserve the possibility that the original expense will eventually be justified. The current decision should be separated from the past one. The question now is what response serves the present, not whether the earlier choice can be rewritten. Avoidance can protect against an immediate emotional drop, but it leaves the purchase unexamined. The person gains temporary relief without gaining clearer information. Rationalization may then become more elaborate. A future scenario is created in which the item finally becomes useful and the earlier judgment is restored. That imagined future can make disposal, resale, or repurposing feel premature. The object continues occupying space while its symbolic role becomes larger than its practical role. Acknowledgement feels sharper because it ends negotiation with the past. The person stops asking how the decision might still be saved and accepts what has already happened. The response can follow a recognizable pattern. Protecting the explanation may feel safer than examining the outcome, even when the explanation creates no additional value. Avoidance may also limit learning. Without naming what failed, it becomes difficult to distinguish a poor fit, unrealistic expectation, timing problem, or flawed purchasing process. At this point, the loss remains financially fixed while its meaning remains adjustable. Understand the mechanism, then decide what the purchase says about you. One mistake does not define overall judgment. Treating it as proof of personal incompetence increases the emotional stakes and makes accurate review less likely. The purchase may have failed for specific reasons. The routine changed, the product did not fit, the expected use was unrealistic, or the benefit was overestimated. Those explanations are more useful than a global verdict. They convert a painful story about identity into bounded information about one decision under particular conditions. A person may instead spend more to repair the original purchase, hoping accessories, upgrades, or renewed effort will transform the outcome and avoid acknowledgement. Additional commitment can deepen attachment without resolving the mismatch. New spending should be evaluated for present value, not used automatically to defend the first expense. The mechanism is internal rather than structural. Even when resale, return, or disposal is easy, recognition may remain difficult because the emotional meaning has not changed. It may be strongest when the purchase was expensive, publicly discussed, tied to expertise, or connected to a goal the person considers important. Awareness can clarify the pattern, but it does not make acknowledgement painless. The emotional response may remain while the decision becomes more deliberate. A rational exception matters. Some used items still retain genuine option value, emergency value, seasonal usefulness, or a reasonable chance of near-term use. Temporary non-use may reflect recovery, relocation, schedule disruption, or missing complementary resources. An item should not be declared wasteful only because it is inactive today. A purchase may also have provided learning, convenience, or one important use that was valuable even if the original expectation was not fully met. The limitation matters here. Acknowledgement should not become forced self-criticism. An accurate review can recognize mixed value rather than demanding a simple success or failure label. Not every hopeful explanation is rationalization. Some plans are genuinely delayed and some value remains difficult to observe until the relevant situation returns. Imagine two identical unused machines. One is needed for an upcoming recurring task. The other stays only because its owner cannot tolerate calling the purchase mistaken. The validating question is whether a specific future use, retained value, or practical function exists, rather than whether hope alone can keep the original story alive. The opening paradox can now be resolved. Admitting waste feels like losing again because acknowledgement removes hope, challenges judgment, and makes the outcome emotionally definite. The money itself is not lost twice. What changes during acknowledgement is the interpretation protecting the earlier decision and the self-image connected to it. That distinction matters because an interpretation can be updated without turning the update into punishment. Recognition can be precise, limited, and directed toward the next choice. Continuing avoidance does not reverse the purchase. It can preserve discomfort in a quieter form while preventing a clear decision about use, resale, storage, or replacement. Consider the next decision separately. Identify what value was expected, what value actually appeared, and which assumption created the largest gap between them. Acknowledge the bounded fact rather than issuing a global verdict. The purchase may have been a poor fit without proving that you are generally careless with money. The object can then receive a present role, active use, limited standby, repurposing, transfer, resale, or release. Each option should reflect current value. Learning becomes possible when the failed expectation is named. The next purchase can be tested against actual routines, constraints, and evidence from this specific experience. The resolution is not that regret disappears. It is that regret no longer needs to control whether the financial outcome can be examined accurately. Start by describing the event in neutral terms. What was purchased, what function was expected, what changed, and what useful value remains today. Separate recoverable value from unrecoverable value. Time, storage, maintenance, and attention may still be adjustable even when the original payment cannot be recovered. The pattern becomes clearer here. Ask whether a new expense would create present value or merely postpone the moment when the first decision is acknowledged. Use a limited lesson rather than a permanent rule. One disappointing purchase may justify a better trial process without requiring distrust of every future opportunity. Preserve any genuine value that remains. Acknowledgement does not require discarding an item that still serves a specific purpose or has a realistic upcoming use. Release the defensive story when it is the only thing keeping the purchase active. The story protected you temporarily, but it cannot change the completed transaction. A deliberate review can respect the hope behind the purchase while accepting the outcome. That balance creates information without turning the past into a moral failure. The loss occurred once. Acknowledgement decides what happens next. The current decision should be separated from the past one before more resources follow it. Recognition can close one story and improve the next decision. Understand the pattern, change the behavior. See you next time.